guys, welcome back to season 2 of 5 Drinks or Midnight, our video series where we bring the questions, our guests bring the drinks, and hopefully we wrap up before midnight, because we all know that drinking after midnight can't film it. Today we're talking to Jarlath Watson, Global Brand Ambassador for Echlinville Distillery, but before we do, really help us out. Thanks. Jarlath Watson, thank you so much for joining us. 5 Drinks or Midnight, 5 drinks, midnight, whatever comes first. Thank you so much for these beautiful things. I'm really looking forward to opening them up. How are you doing, sir?
Yeah, all good, all good. Hey, yeah, just looking forward to getting this show on the road.
Excellent, excellent. What's our first drink? What are we drinking first?
Our first drink, if it's ready, is probably the Belfast coffee. Did you put that nutmeg on top?
Sure did.
I did. All right, so okay. Well, here's one that I made just about 5 minutes ago. So,
you're way better than I am. I'm a terrible. See, look at that. I've moved around too much. I've already ruined it. So.
Oh yeah, hey, no bother. So anyway, Flonson.
All right. So why the Belfast coffee?
Yeah, the Belfast coffee. I guess it's become a bit of a tradition for me and the guys in Belfast Whiskey Club. We used to we have a whiskey club that meets twice a month in well, back before the lockdown and the bars closed. We met up in the Duke of York in Belfast. Duke of York is an absolutely amazing whiskey bar in Belfast, in the heart of Belfast, in the Cathedral Quarter, and it's just dripping with whiskey memorabilia. Probably, without offending anybody else, I would say there's more whiskey memorabilia in the Duke of York than there is in any other bar in Ireland.
Oh, wow.
I mean, it's just an absolutely stunning. There's not 1 square inch of the walls or the roof that isn't dripping in old memorabilia. An absolutely gorgeous bar. But yeah, the Belfast coffee it's a cold press Irish coffee. So it's cold pressed coffee. It's cream and it's nutmeg. But instead of using Irish whiskey, we use Bon Poaching and serve it cold. So it's a Poaching based Irish coffee, and it's served with cold pressed coffee, served cold. We make Bon Poaching for Dave Mulligan. Dave Mulligan owns Bar 1661 in Dublin, a very high end cocktail bar, opened up last year. Dave's been making, yeah, that's the one. So yeah. Dave's been making Poaching with us for maybe 6 years, and Bon Poaching would probably be known as the best or one of the best poachings in Ireland. Certainly, we've won Ireland's best poaching 4 or 5 times in a row at the Irish Whiskey Awards. We make a high-end poaching from we distill potatoes, we distill barley, and we distill beets, sugar beets, and we do a blend of all 3 to make a poaching that would have characteristics of poachings from different parts of the island. Hence, the three different distillates. And we've been doing that with Dave now for, as I said, about 6 years. And poaching is great. I love poaching is a lovely drink, and obviously a lot of guys drink poaching in Ireland long before it became legal again. I mean, it fies with whiskey for being our national drink. I suppose Guinness also. We're probably blessed with a few nice national drinks in Ireland,
Yeah,
but poaching certainly up there, and I guess for you, whenever poaching became legalized again about 10 years ago, and then we started to make it a bit more commercial. People were like, well, how do you drink poaching? We know how we drink whiskey, we know how we drink gin, we know how we drink vodka, but how do you drink poaching? And that was a sort of and it's sort of challenging enough. But about 3 years ago, Dave was working with a friend of his in Ladies and Gents, which is a bar he used to work in Kentish Town in London, and come up with this cold press Irish coffee idea, and it's just absolutely gorgeous. And Dave's bar would be frequented by a lot of the guys that work in the industry in Dublin, and the Belfast coffee is the first thing they order. So it's a cocktail bar, and the menu changes regularly, but the Belfast coffee is a staple. It's the signature drink of Bar 1661. So anybody in the industry that goes to Bar 1661, going to Dublin for a drink, will order a Belfast coffee while they browse the cocktail list and decide what they're having after. But the problem with the Belfast coffee is it's served, you have an Irish coffee and it's served warm and it might take you 20 minutes to drink it. You have a Belfast coffee, it's served cold, it's gone in 5 minutes, and you're just left with this lovely coffee, cream and nutmeg flavor, and you just want to have a second, third, fourth and fifth.
Oh, absolutely.
So before you know it, you've had 4 or 5 Belfast coffees before you even order you know, and then you just order a pint of Guinness and go home, you know, so, or a good whiskey. So yeah, so back in the Belfast Whiskey Club, so it became a habit then that we would go out and have a Belfast coffee before the whiskey club started. Coffee's a good, as you know, coffee's a nice palate cleanser, you know,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
the Belfast coffee cleanses your palate before you taste whiskey. That's my excuse and I'm sticking to it, you know. But no, I mean, it's an absolutely gorgeous.
It's great. Again, I think our mutual friend Anthony Sheehy from Irish Whiskey Auctions, he raved about it constantly.
Yeah, so I mean, Dave now does it pre-made. So Dave now does it pre-made in the in this bottle, and I mean it's absolutely fantastic. Because all you do is just pour that, just put it in the fridge, pour it, add some cream, a bit of nutmeg, and you know, none of this cold pressed coffee overnight bollocks. You know, 2 minutes and you have the absolute perfect cocktail in your house. So no, I mean, during lockdown, the pre-made Belfast coffee was my lifesaver. You know, so yeah, I just think it's an absolutely fantastic way of starting any whiskey tasting because, as I say, A, it's a gorgeous drink. B, the coffee does act as a palate cleanser, and C, it's an absolutely gorgeous drink. You know, so.
Absolutely, I totally agree with you. All right, so question one then. How does a guy that went to university to be an accountant end up global brand ambassador for Dunville's?
Well, I went to university to be a chemist.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I done biochemistry at Queen's University in Belfast, but there wasn't very many biochemistry jobs in Ireland at the time. There's a lot now, but there wasn't very many back then. You know, so I was always good at science and maths. And I thought, right, I've tried the science, so I'll try the maths. And I thought, what the mathematics guys do. And I thought they must all do accountancy. So I literally applied for a few jobs and had a job within a fortnight. And that was probably, I grew up on a farm. So spent for the first 20, 21 years, you know, working, helping my dad on the farm. There was 5 brothers and a sister. So all the boys chipped in on the farm. And then, yeah, I went to university. Got a taste for the wilder side of life, as you do whenever you move from a rural community like where I grew up, like where Echlinville is, down the Arts Peninsula, up to Belfast, and yeah, got mislaid and ended up in the whiskey industry. So yeah, about 17 years ago, Shane was looking for an accountant for his businesses. Shane's father and my father were neighbouring farmers in our home parish. So I knew him and I applied for the job and told him that I wasn't what he advertised for, but I was what he needed, and managed to convince him that was the truth. And about that time, he had just decided to buy a pub and a hotel in Portaferry, our neighbouring town. He was buying back a pub that his mum used to own, so it was an old family pub. We bought the pub and we had this stupid idea that, you know, why serve somebody else's whiskey when you can serve your own? So at that point, we approached John Taylor and Echlinville Distillery, as everybody done back then. You know, I mean, John's the godfather of modern Irish whiskey, probably. You know, well, him and a few guys in Middleton, anyway. Yeah, and we started a third-party brand called Fashion Irish Whiskey. And then Fashion went to the States, and Fashion done pretty well in the States for a few years back around the 2007, 8, 9, 10 mark. And that got us a taste for the whiskey business. And then in 2011, we lost supply of the third-party liquid, and we had a decision to make, which was if you want to stay in the whiskey game. And a few other guys had this decision to make too, and this is partly responsible for the booming Irish distillery numbers now. And we went from 3 or 4 distilleries 10 years ago to 34 now, operational distilleries in Ireland. And in 20 years' time, you're going to see the real benefit of that, because you're going to have 34 Irish distilleries all have an 18-year-old spirit of their own. You know, and anybody that thinks that now is the heyday of Irish whiskey renaissance, just wait till you see 18 years' time. But yeah, like a lot of others, we had a choice to make, and we had just bought this big country house called Echlinville House and 18 acres of land, and weren't really too sure what we were going to do with it. And we thought, why don't we build a distillery here? And we built Echlinville, opened in early 13, ran our first distillation in June 13. So our first whiskey 7 years old in Echlinville. It's not out yet. We haven't released any under the Echlinville brand because we don't want to put it out. Don't want to put it out until it's the best it can be. You know, we've had a few young Irish whiskey releases that I think could have been better if it had been held back longer. And I think their first release is very important. So we've been holding, we have 7-year-old malt and 7-year-old pot stills in the warehouse that we're not releasing yet. But yeah, that's in a 5 minutes. That's how we went from doing chemistry in Queens to working the last working the last 10 or 12 years in the whiskey industry.
What's the difference between Dunvilles and Echlinville?
Oh God, that's a long story. But here, I'll just finish this coffee off. Yeah, that is absolutely gorgeous. I just love them. I mean, I would happily have 4, 5, 6 of them. You know, they are just, they're so nourish, and you're just left wanting another one immediately, you know. And that's what normally happens whenever you're pouring those. Dunville's and Echlinville. So Echlinville is our home distillery. It's built on a 17th century manor house called Echlinville House. The name comes from the Echlin family who came across from Scotland in the 1680s, and they built Echlinville House in the 1720s. We purchased it in 2008. It had passed through lots of families, and the only release under the Echlinville name so far is our Echlinville Single Estate Gin. It's an Irish pot still gin. I guess what sets Echlinville apart from a lot of from every other Irish distillery actually is that everything that is distilled in Echlinville is grown on Echlinville farm.
Oh wow! Okay.
Is floor malted on our farm. So every drop of barley that we distill is grown by us and floor malted by us. So we run the entire process from literally from sowing the seed to putting the cork in the bottle. You know, I mean, we all ride motorbikes up in Echlinville, and we go across to Scotland once a year and down to Cork and Dingle and Kerry and across to Europe. And on more than one occasion, Shane, who owns the distillery, has missed that trip because it's a good day in April and he has to go out and sow the barley. You know, good days are for motorbikes, but if you're a farmer, good days are for sowing barley.
There you go.
So Echlinville, so even that Echlinville gin, and you're going to see that Echlinville gin in the States next year again. It's made with 100% malted barley. So most gins will be made from neutral spirit, from grain or from whey or from wheat or whatever. We're one of the very few guys that actually make our own neutral spirit, make our own vodka. We were the first guys in Northern Ireland ever to make vodka. We got a phone call from the revenue saying that we'd made a mistake because we told them we made vodka. And we said, well, we didn't make vodka. It was over Christmas with Dave Mulgren from Bar 61. We were just saying about with the stills. And we put the return in, and then we got a phone call saying, I think you made a mistake here. I said, no, I haven't. We made vodka. It was between Christmas and New Year, and Dave was up about 5 years ago trying to make the bond recipe better. We're going to try and make a slightly cleaner spirit. Anyway, the revenue phoned back and it says, do you know you're the first guys ever to make vodka in Northern Ireland? And I go, no, I didn't know that, because if we hadn't known that, we might have actually, you know, celebrated or done something. Like, we just literally made the vodka, tasted it, had a couple of tea and went home. We didn't market at all, you know. But yeah, so that Echlinville gin is made with, we make that malt barley vodka, so it's a really lovely, creamy, malty vodka. And then we distill that one more time with the botanicals to make a gin. All our whiskies, whether it's single malts, double distilled single malts, or double and triple distilled pot stills, are all made from either malted barley or unmalted barley that's grown in our farm. And as I said, our first spirits are 6 years old. Our first pot still is, our first single malt is 7 years old, and our first pot still is 7 years old on the 22nd of November. But as I say, we have no intention of it. You might see a small release next year. You might not. Our idea is we will put it out when we think it's good enough to go out, and we have. I think we set high standards. Even in the Dunville range, you'll see that we set high standards. You know, we try to put whiskies out that will win lots of awards. Yeah, yeah, you know,
Yeah.
even that Echlinville gin won three gold stars in the Great Taste Awards. The Great Taste Awards are at the UK Food Oscars, and 3 stars is the max you can get. So, for instance, there was 25,500 entries that year, of which about 112 got 3 stars, of which two of them were gins, of which one was ours. You know, so we just trial and trial and trial and trial and trial until we have something that we think cannot be bettered, and then we put it out. And it's the same with those whiskey casks behind you. You know, we let the cask sit sometimes till a year or 2 years longer than we think or budget for, because nothing leaves our place until it's absolutely perfect. You know, and I think that's starting to tell in the reputation that we're building, certainly in Ireland, you know, and hopefully we're going to build that reputation across stateside next year. But yeah, then Dunville's is different. So Dunville's, we were doing third-party whiskies through, as I said, Facken. We wanted to continue on that idea of doing third-party whiskies, where we buy in parcels of high-quality, mature spirit, and then we bring in high quality casks and we finish those for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years in our warehouse. We didn't want to put Echlinville, well, we couldn't put Echlinville, well, we could have, but we didn't want to put Echlinville on the bottle because it would bastardize, it would take away from the Echlinville story of everything that says Echlinville on the bottle will be grown by us, malted by us, distilled by us, and matured in our warehouses. If it says Dunville's, it's a third-party whiskey that we probably brought in, and we put it in our warehouses. It might be at 4 years old, it might be at 8, it might be at 12, whatever, and then we further mature that in high-quality casks, be those Pedro Jimenez, Padre Hurtado, Olarissos, or Tawny Ruby Ports, or Madeiras, Malagas, whatever. We have a larger selection coming next year of different casks, you know. So on the Dunville side. In Dunville, we're concentrating very much this year in Ireland on single cask strength expressions. So we've released about 6 or 7 of those in the last year, and there's another 3 to come out between now and Christmas. And we've got to the point now where they sell out. You know, we release 400 bottles and they sell out within 4 to 5 minutes. You know, and I think that they're selling out on the strength of the quality of a liquid. You know, I mean, we don't do a lot of bullshit around the media, and we don't do a lot of PR at all. You know, our idea of selling liquid is just get liquid on lips. If I can get liquid on lips, I think you'll buy my whiskey. You know, and so yeah, that's the plan. Well, we're going to find out pretty shortly. Here, we'll pour a whiskey. So I think the first one we're going to pour, we're going to run light. So we're going to run with the 3 Crowns, sherry finish, which is the one that's not pitted. There's one that's pitted and one that's not pitted. Yeah.
Yep, that one.
That's the one that's not pitted. Yeah. So we'll take a small drop of that. So
all right. This one
is available across your way at the minute. You're in the bad position at the minute that our single malts are not currently available in the States. We've got some gobshite in the White House that put 25% tariffs on single malts from the north of Ireland, but not the south. He hasn't read the Good Friday Agreement. So if we try and put our single malts into the States at the minute, there's a 25% tariff on it, and we can't afford to carry that, and later probably, you know, we can't ask our importer to carry it. So we're just holding that stock back. But it's really hurt us, you know, because I mean the majority of what we do is single malt whiskey. You know, about 3/4 of our output is single malt, and not being able to put those single malts into the States, you know, it hurts you. So, you know, we have 10-year-olds single malts in PX, we have 12-year-olds in PX, we have 18s in rum, Padre Hurtado, we have 19-year-olds and 20-year-olds in Olarisso. You know, we have a great selection of single malts that are very, you know. But yeah, hopefully, as I say, hopefully, sort of maybe middle of next year, you'll start seeing them, you know, arrive in the States again. You know.
Let's hope.
But for the time being, you have our 3 Crowns sherry finish and 3 Crowns peated finish. So flaunch you on this one,
Cheers.
Tim. Yeah, indeed. So this is a blend of double distilled single malt and grain whiskies. There's whiskies in there from 6 years old to 12. We changed this about 2 years ago. We were making this slightly differently, but we thought we could improve. But we're always trying to improve. We never rest on laurels. Every time I have a drink of Dunville, I'm thinking to myself, how can I improve this? As good as it may be. So what we do with this now is we mature all the individual components, those 3 individual components separately, and then we marry them. And bring them down to bottle on strength, and then we put them back into a fresh first fill Oloroso sherry cask, and we leave it there for between 6 months and a year. So what it's doing then is it's just marinating together. It's becoming more of a single entity, a single whiskey, and it's taking on a lovely, all the 3 separate components are taking on that lovely Oloroso finish. So it becomes more of an accomplished, complete whiskey. It's almost like a stew, that's had its time to get to know itself. And yeah, so on this one, it's all about those, younger or 8 to 10 year, 6 to 10 year Irish whiskey flavors. So lots of butterscotch in there, your cream sodas, some of those, Oloroso type notes, those dried figs and those flavors coming through, but lots of candied orange. The double distilled malt in here comes from just south of the border and a wee distillery that John Tilling used to own. Whenever you put their whiskies into good sherry casks, you get this lovely candied orange, almost like a burnt orange, burnt candied orange or an orange zest. A candied orange zest sometimes is more of a caramelized orange zest note, and that's one of the great notes. That's one of the great notes that we look for in all our Dunville's range. So whenever that note starts to come through in the whiskey, in the finish, that's when I know that we're getting into the zone where this whiskey will be ready. But I want that candied. It's one of my favorite notes in whiskey.
It's so good. I think you nailed it when you said that it's like it's the cream soda and the candied orange. Like that's what I'm getting at. It's so gorgeous.
So again, that's probably the lightest and most accessible whiskey in our range. It's definitely I wouldn't say it's a breakfast whiskey. It's not an 11 a.m. whiskey, but it's a 3 p.m. whiskey.
Definitely.
It's lovely, it's a lovely late lunch and maybe sit in the pub for a few hours after lunch. That's a Friday afternoon whiskey. And I just think it's a lovely introduction to Irish whiskey. So what it does is it tantalizes you as to what maybe the other whiskies in the range will do. And again, it has that lovely, creamy mouthfeel, and there's enough sherry notes in there to give it that syrupiness, to line your mouth. And I used to joke, that I would have a Redbreast 21 before I went shopping with my wife, and clothes shopping, but 2 hours later I would still be in the shop. She's trying on her 10th pair of shoes, and I'm still tasting Redbreast 21 2 hours later. So we're both happy, But I joke about that, because my wife doesn't shop that much, in truth. But thankfully, it tells a story that if you get like a Redbreast 21, how good a whiskey can be whenever the finish just literally goes on forever. And then half an hour later, after it's gone, it comes back for some reason, and it's just, there it is again. Sugar does that. Sugar carries the flavour in your mouth, and you'll see that in the PX12 cask strength and the 18s. But I think you start to see it in this whiskey as well, albeit in a very lighter sense.
Excellent. So our question 2, which I first got introduced to you via Belfast Whiskey Week, is the first time that I really got to put a name to the face. And during your talk, you actually you said something that was really shocking for me for an Irish guy. And you actually called out one of my favorite bars here in New York. You called out Attaboy, and you said that the penicillin was one of your favorite cocktails.
Yeah,
And
yeah. I mean,
and
it's been a long time since I was, yeah, but yeah. Again, that goes back to the bar 1661 connection.
yeah,
So as well as making blonde pots in for Dave, I mean, we've been making blonde pots in for Dave for 6, 7 years now. He's a friend of he's part of our he's part of our distillery and all but named. I mean, he's one of the first names on Friends of Echlinville. I mean, he's I think whenever they write the book on Irish poaching, the first chapter will be or whenever they write the book on the resurgence of Irish poaching, the first chapter will be on Dave Mulligan. On Irish poaching. That's how important he is in the Irish poaching game. But he's also his bar 1661. And obviously 1661 comes from the year that poaching was made illegal, by the British Crown. So that's what his bar is, a cocktail bar, but all the cocktails are based on poachings, for the most part, are Irish whiskies. He only serves Irish spirit, be they Irish beer, Irish wines, Irish brandies, Irish poaching, but mostly poaching. So, but he's also a brilliant mixologist, a brilliant cocktail bar. They wiped the floor at the Irish Cocktail Awards last year, won best new bar, best cocktail team, best this, that, and the other. I mean, I think the one that what's it they left some trophies behind them. But you have a great mixologist like Dave at your doorstep. You're going to use him, So the next drink I sent you was the Three Crowns Peated. So that is a very similar drink to the Three Crowns, only it's a peated version. And again, it's there's not very many peated whiskies in Ireland, and there wasn't at that point. There was no peated blends. This was the only peated blend in Ireland, but we knew it would make a great base to a cocktail. And if you think of the penicillin, the penicillin is made using a Scotch whiskey, but then using a peated whiskey float.
Yep.
So it's a mixture of non-peated whiskey and peated whiskey. So what we have here is a lightly peated blended whiskey, which is pretty much what you get if you mix the two whiskey aspects in the top penicillin. So whenever Dave was looking to do a penicillin on his bar menu, the Dunville's peated was the obvious choice. So he approached us and go for it, absolutely.
Yeah. Well,
no problem. And again, he very kindly does them pre-bottled for me. So
I have one of those.
I'm just the worst. I'm the worst guy in the world at making cocktails. I think maybe I just rush them too much or whatever. So, and I can never do them. I try and make them at home, and then go to Dave's bar and think, that's what it should fucking taste like. Mine don't taste like that. So Dave says, look, why don't you just buy the premiums? I said, right, just fill my boot, open the boot, and just fill the boot of my car. Just fill the trunk of my car, and I'm happy. So
there you go.
I have a fridge full of these babies. So we'll give this a good shake. And then we'll pour this.
The big thing is that.
You got a big bowl.
Yeah.
You have the real McCoy. Very good.
But for you, like it blew me away a little bit for you to mention how much you like cocktails, because again, I most Irish people consider that taboo, and like when I bring it up with Anthony, he always makes a really funny like cocktail like shaker motion dance, and it's pretty funny. But I mean, for you to bring it up, and with Dunville's being in this and a bunch of other cocktails, what is your favorite cocktail?
At the minute it's a Belfast coffee, and I don't just say that because it's Bon Poaching. At the minute it's the Belfast coffee wins hands down for me. I'm probably a traditionalist with cocktails. My go-to is a good whiskey sour.
Okay.
And probably more so for for that. Again, I tend to like cocktails that almost have a palate cleansing effect.
Okay.
You know, because I would drink Guinness, or I would drink straight whiskey. You know, and after you've had 3, 4, or 5 Guinness, or 3, 4, or 5 straight whiskies, you want something to cleanse your palate. You want something with a bit of citrus in there. You want something with a bit of sharpness in there. It's just something to get your taste buds started again, you know, or to cleanse them. The Belfast coffee does that, but it doesn't have that sharpness, that acidity that you might get in a good whiskey sour, you know. So I do love a good whiskey sour. I love it, you know, at the start of the night. I love it halfway through the night, just to cleanse my palate and to restart my palate, especially if I'm going from maybe a peated whiskey to an unpeated whiskey. It's always nice to get something citrus or sharp or acidic in there to cleanse it, you know. Penicillins, that type of thing, you know. I love, I just know that you know, that mixture of, again, you know, that acidity, the honey, the smoke, and the whiskey. I mean, that's just I think that's nectar of the gods.
Yeah.
You know, I really do think, you know, and I'm a, you know, I do love my peated whiskies, you know. I mean, and we're getting into peated whiskey season. You know, like, I mean, probably from now to March, you know, I'll probably revert to drinking Irish pot stills and peated whiskies. So here we have, I think we need to do another drink.
Yeah. All right. So we should move on to question 3.
Yeah, looks like it.
All right. What are we drinking?
You know, I think we'll bypass the standard 12 and we'll just go straight for the PX12 cask strength, will we?
That one?
Yep, that one.
I already got I'll keep the sample. I'm gonna go ahead and it's already popped. So
yeah, I have my own bigger sample bottle.
there you go.
This is one of the this is one of the great perks of working for a distillery. You know that you can bring these samples home for analysis purposes. You know.
There you go.
This is work, Tim. This is work for me.
Well, I will tell you, I think this is gorgeous, and it's probably one of my favorites of 2020. So I am so glad that I got turned on to this, because, and I actually have it hid in my cabinet back there, because I've been drinking it too much, and there's like you can't find it anymore and everything.
Well,
so
I had set 3 aside for myself of the last one, and then I kept getting people after me. You know, I'll not make tonight. You know, so I gave 2 of them. Or I told 2 people I would get them 1 each. You know, I thought, well, do what? I'll just go on. I go on the morning and buy 1 or 2 for myself. You know, so the last one sold out in like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
So I was like, I think I was out doing some work in the garden, and it was 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning, and I rocked in about 6 or 8 minutes past 9, like very innocently thinking I'll just go here, grab my card, and go on to the website and buy a couple of bottles, chat on the phone, and sold out 4 minutes ago.
Yeah.
I'm like, what the absolute F is going on here?
Yeah, no.
You know, I mean, like, the idea that, you know, like, I mean, I think, Tim, you know, I mean, we've been in the industry for a while. We've been in it for off and on, you know, for 14 years in some sense of the word, but for 8 years in Dunville and 7 years in Echlinville. In whiskey terms, we're still in nappies.
Yeah.
You know, this is Dunville and Echlinville. You know, in whiskey terms, we are absolute beginners. You know, we're like David Bowie. We know that's what we are. You know, like, I mean, so the idea is, you know, that we would hit on this concept of these sherry finished whiskies where we give it, you know, 2, 3, 4 years in very high-end sherry casks, and we've hit on something, and we've hit a nerve on the Irish whiskey scene, and people really buy into good quality, high ABV, but not high ABV for ABV alcohol's sake. A high ABV because it balances with the flavor profile, and the flavor and the alcohol balance perfectly, work together, so as you're not saying I'm not getting the alcohol, and you're not saying there's too much alcohol there. It's just, well, doesn't that alcohol work with those flavors? Doesn't it enhance the flavors? Doesn't the whole thing just work perfectly? Isn't it so juicy? Isn't it so flavorsome? I mean, it's, you know, this is bold. This is, I mean, I always think, you know, I always joke with PX12 cask strength, and people say, what's it like? I said, it's like a kick to the side of the head, but in a nice way. Do you
Oh,
know? And that's what it is. I mean, it's there's nothing subtle about it.
and you're absolutely right. It isn't that, like, it's high proof, but it's not a kick to the face. It's a great balance, and you get
Yeah,
those
it is.
flavors.
It is. I mean, the alcohol's there, but the alcohol isn't front and center. The alcohol is enveloped by this sugary syrupy
Yeah.
gorgeousness. You know, and that's what it is. You know, and that's why it's so lovely. I just love whiskeys that just make your mouth water and just make you want to chew and smack your
Yeah.
lips, and you're just going, and it's there 5 minutes later, and
Yeah.
and the alcohol and the spice. I always think with a great whiskey, with a great finish, the finish should go on for a while, and you should be getting a lot of those drier PX notes, a lot of those notes that are maybe more Oloroso notes, those figs and Christmas tree notes. They come through whenever the sugary sweetness of that orange zest and the more citrus notes disappear. Those dried sherry notes come through. And then even after they go, you're just left with this alcohol, this tingling alcohol and the spice on the side of your tongue. And I always think a great whiskey is something that just the very last thing you get is this last wee tingle of alcohol and the wee fizz of spice on the side of your tongue,
Yeah.
a wee bit of dryness, and that's what you're left with, and yeah.
We're kind of getting into question 3, which is, we talked about it, the resurgence of Irish whiskey, and again, Dunville's being in the nappies, as you say. But like, where do you see Irish whiskey going in like the next 10, 15, 25 years?
Well, yeah, that's the point I was touching on. I think, with a lot of admiration for Scotch, because Scotch done that whole hollow branding thing, I mean, 94% of Scotch whiskey sold as blends. But if you mention Scotch, people will say single malt, because Scotch advertise single malts and sell blends. And that's what they do, but they advertise single malts. We in Ireland have been advertising and selling blends. So we have to actually premiumize Irish whiskey. You're saying that a lot of Irish whiskey in the States is done in shots.
Yeah.
And that's true. And that's because what you've been getting for a long time is whiskey that and that's how it's been sold to you. That's the story. And people will tell you that Irish whiskey is triple distilled and it's smooth and it's all these bollocks. Hate all that shit. I mean, it's just like, Irish whiskey was never smooth. It was never easy drinking. I mean, Dublin pot still, Old Cumber pot still, Cork pot still with big brass bold, double distilled pot still, 30% oats, 40% malted barley. I mean, it was the Irish whiskey 100 years ago was the polar opposite of smooth. I mean, it was something that, it was as big and brash as you could get. You go back and try some of those historic pot still mashes, that Brendan Cardy and Killowen's doing, or Peter and the guys in Blackwater and are doing, or we're doing, or other guys are doing, and trying to reclaim that Irish whiskey heritage. Even you try a Redbreast 12. Redbreast 12 is not smooth, and it's not, I mean, it's full bodied, it's flavoursome, and that's what Irish whiskey really is. And we have to get the guys that are drinking single malt Scots across the drinking single malt Irish or pot still, but we have to get the guys that are drinking, the entry level Irish blends on to drinking, to show them that this is not all that Irish whiskey has to offer. And Irish whiskey has to premiumize, and it will premiumize through, you have 34 distilleries in Ireland now. That's 30 more than there was 10 years ago. I guarantee that 25 of those are smaller. 25 of those are small, if not smaller than us. They will never compete. They will never compete on volume, and therefore cannot go into that market of, here's a whiskey you can buy for 50 cents, sure, just shit it. I mean, that they would all be like us. They have to keep their whiskey in barrels longer, put out really high-end whiskey and charge more for it. And most of the guys that are building distilleries are whiskey geeks. They're in it for the right reasons. They're passionate. I know them all. They're passionate about it. They're as passionate as me. Dingo or David Stapleton and Connaught, or the guys in, Hinch or Brennan and Cologne, or Tilling or another town, Blackwater or Walsh or whatever. They're all in it for the right reasons. They're all going to be bringing out expressions that are more mature, that are single malt or single pot still, and that are 10 years plus. And in 20 years' time, whenever all these studies are 20 years old, and you start seeing 18-year-old single pot still expressions from every county in Ireland, north and south. I'm in County Down in the north of Ireland, and there's now 5 whiskey distilleries in County Down. I mean, that just wrecks my head. There wasn't a whiskey distillery in County Down for 75 years, and now there's 5 of them. And 5 good wee distilleries. You have Brendan Cardy at Cologne, good friend of ours. You have David across in Rodham Estate, Shortcross. You have Gareth up in Copeland. You have Hinch. And you have Echlinville. The idea that County Down is 5 distilleries is just, it's mad, So no, that's a 12-year-old. I mean, and honestly, that's a hard whiskey to follow.
Yeah, no, it's.
I'm not too sure where to go next after we had that one.
Well, yeah, and we got 2 questions left. It's not even midnight yet, and I don't even know where to go from this.
I think we'd quite happily just pour that 2 more times.
I've already poured it like 4 times, so.
Yeah, I've seen that, Timothy. Hey, do you know what? We were talking about it earlier. About how we miss how the lockdown is hard on certain aspects. Like I know over here, in the rural Irish communities, not having the Irish wake, not being able to go to an Irish wake and have that healing process.
Yep.
It's so important, and it's so inherent. I think it's so inherent to who we are. And my dad, God rest him, passed away about 3 years ago, but my dad was one of these guys that he didn't drink, but he was a mad storyteller and loved the history. And he was the one that went to the wake at 12:30 at night and sat till 6 in the morning. But obviously here we do the whole night sitting. We sit in the hut for 3 days, and my dad was one of the ones that went late and sat and listened to all the stories of the older generations, and that's how the stories were passed down, and that little history is retained. I know that recently, not going to wakes has been, not being able to have that with your neighbours and your friends is awful, and even go to funerals. But even just sitting sharing a whiskey face to face, we don't. I mean, we do it in our distillery for tasting with the staff, and that's the only time that I have a whiskey face to face with anybody for a long time now. And it's just such a lovely civilized experience, and it's one of the joys in life. It is one of life's. Just have a drink, sit down and have a drink with somebody, and just tell them your whatever it is, and then let them tell you their problems and their joys and their tribulations and their highs and their lows, and just share them. And I mean, I know we're doing that now from a distance, but I mean,
it's not the same.
Realize,
yes, agreed. I mean, the one thing that I truly do miss is just sitting in a pub and talking with people. I tell people this a lot. You don't go to a pub to drink. You go to a pub to socialize.
No, you go to a pub to, in some ways, to keep your head straight, not to blend it. I mean, our little bar around the corner from us, the Saltwater Brig, a mile from our distillery. My best mate, Joe McCarthy, owns it. They do amazing Guinness. And just to sit at the bar, talk to Joe and have a Guinness, would just be absolutely, it would be a dream come. It'd just be so lovely. Going to Dingo, going to Dick Mack's, going and seeing Finn and Peter and having a Dick Mack's, if anybody hasn't been Dick Mack's, it has to be on your agenda and your visit.
Common, he is a big fan of Dick Mack. And
the last time that I had a drink with Michael Timon was the day after the Irish Whiskey Awards this time last year. We won Best Irish Whiskey under 12 years old for the PX12. it was on a Thursday night, and then a few of us stayed down on the Friday as well. So I met Michael and Dick Max on the Friday night, and we had a Jamie 15. It's a Jameson. Have you had Jameson 15 before?
Yes.
It is one of the quintessential, not even Irish whiskies, it's one of the quintessential whiskies of the world. You know, it's all, Middleton have 4 different pot stills they make, and this is 100% the heaviest pot still. I mean, it's an absolute, it's just a stunning whiskey. They made it, I think the last release was about 10 years ago. And we don't get to it very often, but Michael and myself had one each, and we sat and we hadn't had it for about a year each before, and we just sat for half an hour just going, holy fuck, holy fuck, holy fuck, you know. And that I think that's all we said for half an hour. It was just, there might have been a few holy sweet fucks in there, but mostly, you know, I mean, it's just one of those where, you know, and it's just one of those whiskeys like that you know, just get better and better as you know. Yeah. So the last time I seen Michael Town was in Dick Max drinking Jimmy 15. There's a whiskey memory for you.
There you go.
apart from Michael, of course.
Yeah.
So our next whiskey anyway is this baby.
Oh
So
yeah, I've been sipping on that.
This is one of our 18-year-old single malts. This is in a Palo Hurtado craft. Well, a Palo Hurtado is an oxidized pheno, a very rare sherry craft. So what happens is that they make the pheno sherry, and a pheno sherry has in the barrel, the yeast forms a crust on top of the barrel, and then blocks all the oxygen out. So the fermentation that happens under the crust happens in the absence of oxygen. And that's what differentiates a pheno from, say, an Oloroso, where there's no crust.
Okay.
But if you're making a pheno and for some reason that crust breaks halfway through making it, then, so if you're making a pheno, they put a line across the barrel, something like this.
Okay.
And that tells you that the crust is formed. If the crust then breaks and oxygen gets in, they put another line across it, which something like that. And that's the sign for a Palo Hurtado. And Palo Hurtado just means broken line. It means broken line. So the line is broken, the crust is broken. So what happens is that it spends the first part of its fermentation without oxygen, and then the second part with oxygen. So you get something between an Oloroso and a pheno, but you get all these nutty elements to it that aren't in either. And it's fresher than an Oloroso, but it still has those notes. So again, this is an 18-year-old single craft strength. It spent 15 years in bourbon, and then 3.5 years in a Palo Hurtado craft. And again, nobody else was using Palo Hurtado crafts in Ireland. We started using them 4 years ago, you know, and now they're a lot more popular. We have it was very important for Dunville, you know, that we get the right cast. We have a great relationship with the guys that supply our crafts, because they now know that 85% of the casts that they get aren't for us, because they know that we set a bar this high, you know, and those top 15%, they will, whenever they get them in, they'll make a phone call and say, we now have some Dunville's crafts in, and then we'll buy them. But I mean, they know that 85% of what they get aren't for us, because they're not the standard we're looking for. And hopefully whenever you try the PX12, and that's why that PX12 cast strength is what it is, because it's 85% of the casts that we don't use. If you understand me.
Yeah, I got you.
That make the difference. And again, you'll see it in these Palo Hurtado as well, you know. So
this is gorgeous. Like, this is amazing.
This is a different animal. I mean, it has that, it still has that lovely orange, and this one is more of an orange peel than a burnt orange, you know. It's not just as syrupy as a PX12, as a Pedro Jimenez craft, but it still has that feel of luxury. I mean, it has that Dunville's signature of that luxury experience, you know.
Excellent.
And again,
again, this leads perfectly into our question 4, which again, you've kind of described it throughout all of our 4 questions, tasting all of the Dunvilles. But what is, in your opinion, what makes a good Irish whiskey?
Oh God, no! See, I mean, it's such a broad church. I mean, we are lucky in Ireland that we have such a broad church of whiskies. You know, we have. I mean, in truth, at heart, we're all pot still fanatics. You know, we all just, you know, I like heavier distillates. I like more distillate-driven whiskies, maybe like Pars. You know, the Marrowbone Lane release that the Irish Whiskey Society done was absolutely stunning. But I like the Redbreast more. The Redbreast have more of that heavier pot still in it and more of a sherry influence. And again, I go back to that heyday of Irish whiskey. You know, when it was sherry casks, it was port casks, it was rum casks, it was those fortified wine casks, Bordeaux casks, whatever. You know, I want whiskey that's, it doesn't really matter whether it's a single malt or a blend. I love them both equally in truth, you know, or sorry, single malt or pot still. Blends, a good blend done very well. Like, I mean, Brendan Cardy at Cologne, you have Cologne there. I believe you have 1 or 2 Colognes there.
Yeah, just one, but yeah.
Like Brendan's a neighbour of ours and a friend of ours in the Mourne Mountains in County Down. And Brendan's doing 2 amazing things. He's making whiskey in probably the smallest distillery in Ireland using flame fed stills. Can you really say that this time of night? And his new make whiskey and the Cologne whiskey he's making is just, it's stunning. You know, in 10 years' time or 5 years' time, Cologne whiskey, he only makes about a barrel a week, so you'll never get it, but it's going to be absolutely fantastic. But he's also doing a bonded experimental series where he brought in 10-year-old blend and he's doing different casks. And I mean, he's doing great things with, you know, some of those blends that he done, the Pinot Noir cask, the rum cask,
the rum cask that he did for Belfast Whiskey.
Belfast Whiskey Week, the single malt. Yeah.
That was,
you know, I mean, so I suppose, you know, I mean, you know, there's great blends out there in R3 Crowns and different ones, you know, but in the single malts and pots, I just want a whiskey that's, I hate boring whiskies. You know, I hate smooth. I hate, you know, like a whiskey that doesn't risk offending somebody will never really be passionate to anybody. You know, so you have to risk offending somebody to make a whiskey that somebody else will be passionate about.
Agreed.
Do you know what I mean? So whiskey has to take a chance. It has to be big and bold, and it has to be. I would love people in 5 years' time to taste the whiskey and go, that's Dunville's, because that's Dunville's signature, you know. And I think, you know, and in fairness, Redbreast do that, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, and we all, I mean, whenever you talk about whiskies that you're passionate about, I mean, it's hard to go past, in Ireland, it's hard to go past Redbreast. It doesn't matter where it's a 12, cast down to 15 to 21, the new 27s and the 27 port is just sublime.
Yeah.
There's a 28 out that's only in Whiskey Exchange port, absolutely breathtaking.
The Dream Cast, yeah.
The Dream Cast are just stupid good, you know. Yeah. I mean, I think with Dunville's, we're sort of hanging on Redbreast coattails. You know, I think we're doing a similar thing in single malts as they're doing in pot stills, and we're giving it these, you know, heavy sherry finishes, heavy port finishes, luxurious finishes, making them chewy, making them big, making them bold, making them luscious, making them luxurious, you know. And it doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter whether it's Taiwanese whiskey, whether it's Catalan or Omar, or whether it's Japanese whiskey, or whether it's Scots, whether it's Glendronach or Glenlivet or Springbank or Kilchoman, or whether it's Irish, whether it's Dingle or Dunvilles or Quiet Man or whatever, or Redbreast, or, you know, Tailing. I mean, whiskey, I think there's not Irish, Scots, Japanese, there's good whiskey and bad whiskey. You know, and there's great Irish and there's great Scots and there's great Japanese and Canadian and American, you know, and then there's shit Irish and Canadian and American and Scots, and we've all
Should we move on to our fifth and final drink question?
Right.
I mean, it's not close to midnight, but it's close for you. So,
You know what? I have a few more whiskeys here. We can sit on for a while. Tim, no bother at
well,
all.
there's no rush in my book.
Right.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
I have tons of stuff left. So, I mean, we can drink Dunvilles all day. So, I am ready to go. But I have a glass that's been sitting here for about 20 minutes. So, I'm excited to try that one. So,
Yeah. So this is we 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 were sitting in the distillery in 2015. We got a phone call from actually a near neighbour of ours in Bangor in County Down. And he's a Turkish paralleler. He's one of these guys, a lit red there.
holy fuck.
Yeah.
That
So-
was amazing. Okay.
A guy called Barney Esherwood phones us. So Barney who drinks parallel. So Barney buys alcohol where it's cheap and sells it where it's dear. So he might buy Guinness in Nigeria and sell it in Oman. He might buy Jameson in Brazil and sell it in Canada by the container load. And he shifts, you know, and he works with companies to do this to hit sales targets. But anyway, he phoned us in 2015. He says, I have £500,000 of 41-year-old Port Morant Estate rum. Do you want to buy it? And Graham, who's our distiller, used to work in the Caribbean Commission and Rum Distillery, so he knows with rum. And he goes, Port Morant Estate rum, that closed down in 1975. So if it's 41 years old, it's the very last year of production. And it's fucking Port Morant Estate. Port Morant had this wooden pot com still. Mad idea. And it was, so this 41-year-old rum on £500,000, and we didn't know like sweet FA about rum and didn't have £500,000. So we're out and we said, do you know what? I'll bring it down and let's try it. We'll always try a 41-year-old rum, you know, why not? So Barney rocked down with this 41-year-old rum and we tried it and we were just blown away by it. I mean, it's just unreal. And we looked at each other, Shane, Graham, myself. Shane doesn't drink, so he was just smelling it. Graham, myself, just looking at each other. And Barney's now selling the rum himself for £2,000 a bottle. That's how much his rum sells for, £2 grand a bottle. 41-year-old rum from a silent distillery, from its very last year of production. And we smelled it and we goes, how much was 8 casks? Right, we have to have those casks. But the casks were promised to a very small distillery in Scotland. But Barney sort of said, look, I wouldn't mind the cask of your new make. So if I get a cask of your new make, I can leave my gates open some night and sure if those casks aren't there in the morning, I know that I've got a cask of your new make. So that's what happened. We brought these 8 casks once they were emptied of the rum in, and there was still a bit of rum in, and we smelt and goes, oh my Jesus Christ, I could just crawl into these casks and die very happy, you know, stunning. But we had just brought in some we just brought in some truly 15-year-old. So we put it in there and we left it for 3 years. And after 6 or 9 months, the palate was there. And after about a year and a half, the nose was there. But it took another year for the finish to come. And Graham and myself were always afraid that the palate would drop off before the finish came. So as soon as the finish came, we bottled it as an 18-year-old. But in the meantime, Shane started building this whole package around it. So if you Google our 18-year-old Port Morant, you'll see this big red box.
Yep, with the mirror and everything.
Yeah. So Dunvilles were famous for their mirrors, right? It was Dunvilles. So we actually put a lead glass mirror in the box, so sized by like a big, you know. Well, my sister Anne Marie, who does the PR for the distillery, she then wrote a book. So she wrote a whole book on the history of Dunville from 1808 to present, including the Echlinville part of the story. I mean, we wrote a fucking book, Tim. I mean, writing the book is expensive business, you know. And then what we thought was, do you know what? This is really not complete. Do you know what we'll do? We'll go and buy 100 bottles of the rum, and then we'll put the rum in wee 14-ounce bottles. And we'll actually put some of the 41-year-old rum. We'll put some of the 41-year-old rum in the box as well. But there's nobody, you know, people talk about whiskey finishes and talk about, oh, this was in Oloroso, or this was in Sherry, or this was in whatever. But we thought we'd go one step further. We thought we would let you taste the liquid that was in the cask before our whiskey went into it. Now this rum sells for £2,000 a bottle. Now we got a bit of a discount, but it was still like 1,600 quid a bottle. And so that wee bottle that we put in was £80 worth just from that wee bottle alone of rum, you know. I mean, it was stupid, you know. So in the box you get £80 of 41-year-old rum from a silent distillery. You'll never ever get Port Morant rum again, Port Morant Estate rum, and you'll never ever get a 41-year-old person. No, but it just doesn't exist. But then we put so that's all in the box: the mirror, the burt, the rum, and the 18-year-old whiskey. But we put our whiskey into it for 3 years, and what you get is just. And again, that Cooley malt just works so well with finishes. Whereas Cooley malt's lovely, but it has gaps in it for cask influence. So what you get here is just, you know, I grew up on a farm, I told you before, and we used to mix our own meal. We used to mill our own barley and then mix in nuts and mix in. And the very last thing you mixed in before you give it to the cows was molasses. So you used to run molasses into the meal while it was mixing. So you're standing in the mixing house and the milling house in the farm, and you had this smell of fresh milled barley, nuts, and then molasses. And this is just what this is in the glass, you know. I mean, this is just, you know, those. And what Port Morant Estate rum, what they'd done was before they filled the barrel, they would actually line the barrel with molasses. So they would pour molasses into the barrel, line the inside, and then take the ends off, let that molasses dry out, put the ends back on, and then fill the barrel. So the first thing the rum done before it got to the wood was dissolve all that molasses that was lining the wood. So it got this big kick of farmyard molasses, you know. So whenever you taste this,
it's fucking amazing.
You know,
honestly,
the malt in it is so clean. And that's the thing about rum finishes. Rum finishes, and that's why Bushmills works. I mean, if anybody hasn't tried Bushmills with rum finishes, Bushmills, Cadenheads do Bushmills rum finishes with 18, 16 years old. And it's one of my favorite Bushmills finishes because it works for Bushmills, but it works. I mean, this rum just works. 41-year-old rum in there for 3.5 years. And the whiskey's just drawn out all those, like, there's every layer of brown sugar under the sun. There's molasses, there's treacle, there's muscovado, there's soft brown sugar, you know, and that's before you get into before you get to the bananas and the pineapples and then all those, you know, normal malt flavors and your green apples and your orchard fruits and your softer orchard fruits. And you know, to me, this and there's no other Irish whiskey quite like this.
No, absolutely. Nothing is like.
And this was our first single cask release, and this was meant to be. We wanted to put out a whiskey that would get the world's attention for Dunvilles, and nobody's tried the rum yet. Well, wait till they try the fucking rum, you know, because it will just completely blow your mind. It's absolutely stunning, and we're gonna put this into the States next year. We have like a thousand of these for the States, you know, and we can. You know, I am, as you can tell, I'm super proud, absolutely, you know, completely of what we've done with these liquids, you know. But that's only because we don't put them out until they're.
Well, you should be super proud because it's fucking amazing. So
we set a very, very high bar for ourselves, and that becomes more difficult with every release, you know, because you know you have to try and better it, which, you know, but that's a different story. But yeah, I mean that's a Dunville.
And I guess that leads us into our fifth and final question of the night. We're good and sauced, so it's not even midnight yet. I've been told that you are a giant Tolkien fan. Is that true?
How do you know that? Who fucking knows that?
See?
Who knows that?
That's my research. So again, we've done our research. But so our fifth question is a flip of the coin question, which is yes or no. You don't have to answer it, but the coin will answer for you. But does one simply walk into Mordor?
That's why I have to put in a movie. Right, here goes.
There you go.
You do? Yeah. Does one simply walk? Do you know? No.
No.
Well, do you know? No. Hey, I'll tell you what. The answer is in the question. The coin doesn't lie. The coin is right.
Yeah.
No, Tim. Does one work in? Yes, one does work in. Does 100 work in? No.
No.
But does one work in? One does work in. So I guess the coin was right.
All right, there we go.
If you understand me, you know, I mean, if Frodo had a party of 10, they wouldn't have got in a party of 1 or 2.
Yeah.
Cans in. So yeah, the coin was right. There you go.
There we go.
I'm keeping that. That's a magic coin.
Love it.
That's a good coin.
Jarlath, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate your time. 5 drinks, 5 questions, not even close to midnight. I hope that we can drink very, very soon, face to face. So
Well, it's like 10 minutes to midnight. It's close enough.
No,
here, Tim, thank you very much.
I raise my glass to you. Thank you,
No.
sir. I really appreciate your time.
Great night. Thank you very much. Enjoy. It's now 1:45, so that was close enough.
That's close enough.
Yeah. Right here. Talk to you soon. Cheers, Sam. Night.
Thank you, sir. Bye.
Night.